Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's the radioactive pop with Danny Limelight, the United Wrestling Network World Heavyweight Champion. And make sure you tune into the Alliance blog every week. You heard it here first. Straight from Poppy.
They want NWA? Let's give them NWA.
Who are those guys?
And then there's the other guys.
We're the other guys. We're the guys nobody ever bets on.
The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
It's time for the Other Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts, Tim, Dave, and Jeremy.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and what can we tell you? It is time for another episode of the Other Alliance Guys, a broadcast of alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information around the National Wrestling Alliance, the United Wrestling Network, and various independents around the world. My name is Tim. I'm joined by the boys, Dave, Scooby, and Jeremy, and fighting out of the great city of Montreal in the Belle Province of Quebec, Canada. He weighs in, although he looks a little slimmer, at 320 pounds. He's a Montreal Mastodon. He's the former NWA British Commonwealth and NWA North American champion and a couple of other NWA titles. He's Dru Onyx. How are you, my friend?
What's up, guys? How you doing? I'm all right.
Good to hear. Good to hear. That's an intro, eh? I had to get a mic.
I'm telling you, I'm going to use you on my shows.
How are those shows going?
They're going very well. We just had one last Sunday, full capacity, high energy. Everybody busted their asses, and we provided some good entertainment.
Yeah, it's good. I saw the pictures. It looked like it was packed there, so that's amazing.
Yeah,
we're going to spend the first hour of our show with Dru today. We got a bunch of people in the chat right now, so speak up your questions for Dru. We got Willie's in the house right now. Willie's always in the house. That's great. Sam Retro's here. What's up, Sam? Good to see you, my friend. And our old friend, Dodi Cusamanto. Can we make a petition to Billy to bring Dru Onyx to the NWA? I'm all for that. What do you think, Dru? You want to head back to the National Wrestling Alliance?
For sure. I'd love to have an opportunity to go back to the National Wrestling Alliance. It's one of the favorite promotions growing up watching and also being a part of. It was my mission statement when I first started as a professional wrestler that the only thing that I had on my bucket list, I had two, one to wrestle in England and one to pick up an NWA heavyweight championship. So it was definitely a directive, and I think I still got more gas in the tank, and I wouldn't mind another shot.
Yeah, you know, we have been tweeting at the NWA and at Tyrus to give you a shot at the 10 pounds of gold, because he's like 36 on the list of total days as champion out of, I don't know, 50. How many champs we got? 58, something like that. And he has had 0 title defenses.
Really?
And yeah, it's different. And I want to talk to you about that at some point today, about what happened with you with the United Kingdom Championship and how there was a rule at the time, I'm going to guess in the Ernie Todd, Bob Trowbridge era, where you had to defend your titles every 30 days. And
that was mandatory. And it had to happen. And if you couldn't, you had to go on tour, or if not, they would strip you for the title. So it was imperative for all the champions to be fighting champions, to be able to defend the belts, and to promote both, Hammerlock, the NWA, and yourself. So that was the criteria. I don't know what the situation is now. I know that the NWA currently is going through a rebirth. It's a birthing process, and who knows what's happening with management and the direction they want to go. But he's in the top position right now as the champion, and I'm looking forward to see what he does with it. Yeah,
I guess we just want him to do something. That'll be great.
Yeah, but don't get yourself blocked. Don't get yourself blocked tweeting, trying to get me on, eh?
Oh no, not at all. We are gentlemen on this program above all else.
That's cool.
Willie asks, could you ask Dru, has he ever wrestled Jack Stane, Mustang Mike, while he was North American heavyweight champion?
No, never had the opportunity, but I knew of him, and that would have been a cool matchup. But that would have been something I would have enjoyed.
Just before I let the boys get in here and do some talking, because I'm taking over the thing. The boss himself, Jake House, says, please tell Drew that Jake House says thanks for all his support all those years ago.
Yeah, Jay's the man from day one. When he had his before he had his podcast, he had a page, and I would always hit it up. I'd always promote it, always check it. Yeah, props to him. I hope all is well with him.
Yeah, he's doing good. He's got a bunch of kids out there in California, and the alliance is growing every day, as we are, proof of, but with this little show that we do. So why don't we start off with some of the questions? I sent the list around to the guys. I made a little list. So yeah, it's very professional, polished podcast that we do here. You see,
love it.
So I don't know who wants to start. Jeremy, how about you? You want to fire off some questions to Drew?
Yeah. So I'm not too. I wasn't too familiar with your work beforehand, so I went back and familiarized myself. And I got to say, man, your crowds, top notch, bro. I mean, just the energy that they bring to it. I mean, when you came out, that crowd went nuts, and it was refreshing to see, because that's not something that we really get here a whole lot in the States. The chants, and there was people screaming on one side, and they'd finish screaming, and the person would scream on the other side, and there was Ghostbuster chants, and I was blown away by it, man. Are all the crowds up there like that?
Pretty much. First of all, I have to give props to the crowds that come to the Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling shows. They're invested. They interact with the performers. We try to give them 110% to the crowd, and the crowd acknowledges that. And overall, most shows, even outside of my promotion, Montreal fans are naturally rambunctious. They love a good fight, whether it be in hockey, mixed martial arts, boxing, and pro wrestling. And they automatically get invested as soon as they see that the participants in the ring is giving 110%. So, we've been promoting since 2013 strongly. Well, we've been promoting since 2005, but then we stopped, and then we started again from 2013 on. So we've built a fan base that acknowledges the style of wrestling that we have. It's traditional. It's good guy versus bad guy. I try to pattern the promotions outlook from the stuff that I watched from the NWA, the early 80s to 90s, All Japan Pro Wrestling, 1990. As far as the storylines is the contention of titles. It's to try to be the number one, number two contender. Of course, we have outside storylines, but for the most part, it's inside the ring, and we try to give them 110%.
I love to hear that. That's the wrestling that I grew up with, and the kind of style of wrestling that I just hold dearly. So to hear that and to see that crowd and the way that they reacted to everything and what you guys were doing in the ring was just, I love to see it. And I'd love to make it across the border to get to one of your shows for sure.
Anytime. You let me know, make the trek. And if you never had poutine, we'll feed you some poutine.
I have not had poutine.
I had it today, Jeremy. It's the best.
Yeah.
I did find a place here in the Springs that serves it, but I want to have actual Canadian poutine. So yeah,
and Canadian beer. Make sure you get the both.
I don't drink, so
all right.
Well, that's
all good. We'll find something. That's not going to be an issue.
Jay wants to hear the catchphrase noise.
Oh, is that what he's looking for?
I think so.
All right.
Dave, what do you got for us, Dave?
Drew, I would like to say I did go on YouTube, watch some matches that you had, looked you up online to see who you had wrestled. A lot of the names weren't familiar, but there were a few that I did recognize, PCO being one, also Adam Pearce, former NWA champion, Kevin Steen back in the day, and Finn Balor. Now, I've seen Finn wrestle all different types. I mean, Bullet Club, that type of stuff. for a man his size, was it difficult for you to wrestle someone who was that undersized compared to you?
Nope, not at all. First of all, Finn Balor is a pit bull. He's a monster. So, you know what I mean? When it comes to his wrestling ability, size doesn't matter. He'll give you 110%. And I like the whole David and Goliath story inside the ring. So that's not an issue. And, you know, they always say that when you're good friends outside the ring, you know, it's more violent inside or more intense. And that was definitely the case. In fact, we became better friends the more that we wrestled against each other. And yeah, never had an issue with this wrestling because, you know, it was just speed versus strength. It was just, you know, the movable object against the unstoppable force, and the crowd benefited and the crowd enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You know, Dodie wants to know, because he mentions this here rather, under the son of Abdullah, the So Amin challenging the Sheik for the 10 pounds of gold in 2011.
Yeah.
I know you have some story you'll tell me off air one day about it. And I'm not going to push you to tell you now, but
no, I can give you. I can invest. I could give a little bit of the situation.
All right, great.
There was a time where Adam Pearce and I, we battled for the championship, the British Commonwealth Championship, and he won it. And as soon as he won it, maybe 2 weeks later, he won the NWA World Heavyweight title. So he had to vacate the British Commonwealth title. Now, the British Commonwealth title wasn't being sent back to my promotion, and I was trying to get into contact with everybody in order to get the title back. And nobody was really paying me mine for whatever reason. And I took that as disrespect. So I came to an ultimatum. I said that if I don't get my British Commonwealth Championship, I'm going to shoot on the Sheik and get the world. So that plan was going into effect. The promoters, they knew about it. They were down about it. One of my wrestlers that was upstairs had my bags packed. My brother was in a van waiting. Like, we had everything set. You know, I even went, I have a background in boxing and catch wrestling or submission wrestling. And for like 2 months, I just went there full time. And it was nothing against the Sheik personally, but I just thought, like, everybody's not paying me any mind. But if I just snatched the NWA title, the whole world is going to pay attention. And all I just really wanted was just the British Commonwealth Championship back. And it was crazy because even Kevin Steen was involved trying to get it back, and he was like the mediator. And not that there was anything bad, it's just they weren't paying me no mind, but Kevin was going really out of his way to try to get the championship back. So 3 days before we had the match with the Sheik, I got the title back. So then the plans were just dashed. And when I told the promoters of that show, they're like, well, still do it. I'm like, nah, man.
I was going to say, he's not very popular.
Yeah. They're like, yo, no, go for it. It's going to be crazy. And I'm like, it wasn't really about that. And I didn't have anything. I didn't have an issue with the Sheik per se. Like, you know, I respected him as a wrestler. Yeah. But I just wanted my possession back. It's for the federations, for me, whatever the case may be. So literally the match was Saturday. Wednesday, I got the title back. Kevin dropped it for me, and that was it. And yeah, so I was 3 days away of trying to become the next NWA World Champion.
And as I say, there probably are some old promoters who wish you had done that.
Well, that's funny that you said that, because I did not realize how much heat the Sheik had with the NWA. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I had no idea. But anyways, that wasn't really my business, and I wasn't, you know. The only hesitation that I had was I felt like I would have been blackballed by the NWA forever. You know what I mean? And it wasn't really the path that I wanted to take. But those who know me concerning wrestling, like, I try to be as honorable as possible. Your word is your bond. And if you mess with me, I will confront you. I'm not saying that I'll get into a physical altercation, but I will definitely try to rectify the situation. So, but I'm glad that didn't happen. But yeah, that's a story that I haven't told too many people about.
Wow. Yeah, and to put some context into that, for those who don't know, that belt, which now exists with you as its own championship that continues on to this day.
Yeah.
With your own promotion. That's a belt that you created and helped design with Rico Mann and of Parks Millican Man, and that's a piece of art, that belt. Like, it's not something that you could just walk away from and see you later.
Yeah. Well, that's it. There was never, what people don't realize, and I'm dropping another Easter egg, there was never an original British Commonwealth Championship prior to me. So what had happened in the past was when the first champion Spider fought Finn Balor, they didn't have a physical belt. So one of the Florida promoters gave them an old Florida belt to use after the win.
Right.
So Andre Baker, who was the creator with Ernie Todd. Ernie Todd was the promoter for CWF in Manitoba, and Andre Baker was the NWA promoter for UK Hammerlock in England. They felt that the world title wasn't being represented in their countries. They couldn't get their guys to have either opportunities, just even to defend. I mean, to fight for that title or be the champion, though Andre had a chance with one of his wrestlers. So they thought that if they created a championship that could be defended throughout the Commonwealth, that beauty. Yeah, I'm the original over there. I might bust it out, but if they felt that if they had that particular title to defend the title, it would work. So when Andre was the first one that mentioned to me, he's like, "Why don't you open and get your own NWA territory?"
Right.
So once he and Ernie Todd helped me get that, then they decided that, okay, you'll be the British Commonwealth champion, because the title was vacated for whatever reason. So I fought a gentleman from Australia in Manitoba at the 55th or 56th anniversary. The gentleman's name was Will Phoenix, and we fought for the British Commonwealth title. So getting back to the creation of it, I wanted a title that was like worthy of a championship, not just because I was going to hold it, just because I'm a fan. I really appreciate championship belts and good quality ones. So I decided to pattern it off one of the old world-class heavyweight championship. And I decided to just add a few things that I thought was cool, which was have the flag in the outline of the country, as you see like that. Until then, nobody did that before. There was no artwork that had that type of graphics. And on the sides, I got all the Commonwealth. And another Easter egg was I'm from Barbados, so I made sure the Barbados flag was there. And I'm a Canadian citizen, so that was my little ode to me. So, yeah,
it's a thing of beauty, and this one doesn't do justice to anything that Rico Mann has made with his own hands and you designed. But I'm glad to have the copy. Why the NWA for you growing up? Like, I'm sure you were also a WWF fan as well, but like, what about the NWA, that drew you in? I know you were a Horseman guy and you enjoyed that period of time. Like, what was it? Who were your favorites? Who were you following?
Well, what I liked about the NWA, before I even got to wrestling, or during the time I was watching wrestling, I was a big boxing fan. And I used to study boxing, all the former heavyweight champions from Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano, Muhammad Ali, and on. And what always impressed me was, even at a young age, I realized it was always about contention, the number one contender, the number two contender, the number three contender, and all that. And what I loved about the NWA, and like I said, I was a kid watching that. The realism, all right. There was a realism to it. There was a competitive nature. The storylines, once again, was inside the ring. If you were the U.S. champion, you were the number one contender to the world champion. You know what I mean? There was just guys fighting just to be in the top 10, and I loved it. And I loved, like, the WWF. There was nothing wrong with it, but I found it more cartoony.
Yeah.
Whereas, as a young kid, I was like, well, WWF is fake, but NWA is real because it looks real, and there's blood and there was guts, and the cage matches had such a realism to them, and it had me hooked. Some of my favorites: Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes' charisma, Ric Flair, he was such a professional, how he conducted himself inside, outside the ring, how he put over his opponents that he was going to fight. Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, the Rock and Roll Express, the Road Warriors, the Midnight Express. The list can go on, but just seeing the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express, I felt like the evil version of the Rock and Roll Express, and how competitive the matches were, how Dusty and Ric Flair would go at it, how the Road Warriors and the Russians would go at it. It's just such a realism and a believability that as a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old Dru Onyx, seeing that, I was like, my God, that's the place I need to go to.
Yeah, Jeremy, over to you.
So the torture chamber, how did that come about? And who has came through there that you've brought up that's made an impact in the business so far?
All right. Well, the reason why I wanted to put together Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling was, at first, I just wanted to have my own facility to train at. It was to get a couple of wrestlers that I knew or that I traveled with and wrestle. I was watching, like I said, I'm a big fan of boxing. And there was a gentleman, a boxer, Ricky Hatton from England.
Yeah.
And they were doing UFC has a UFC countdown, and boxing has all access, where two competitors will be training, and you'll see the training montage and setting up for the big match. So I was watching Ricky Hatton versus somebody else, and he dictated. He told that he had his own wrestling gym. And that floored me. I'm like, what? He has his own facility to train at? I need to get that. So that was the original. Then eventually more people would come to me to train, and then it became something even more. But what happened was, I was wrestling for a promotion, and they were using the school as a way to help fund the promotions. And they asked me if I would, with another well-known independent female wrestler, Lou Fisto, if we would get together and collaborate and do the school. So I wanted something, as far as name-wise, as something like the Snake Pit from Wigan, or Stampede had the Dungeon, or just say Shamrock had the Lion's Den. So I just wanted something that automatically, when you heard it, it'd make you stop. And I said, okay, the Torture Chamber. So that was originated in 2004, and we're still going.
You still stay in contact with the Fisto?
Yeah, well, whenever I see her, she's very busy. We still have a good. We never fell out or anything like that. So when I do see her, I say hello. And to answer your question, I've sent before the pandemic, just in 1 year alone, I sent about 8 people for trials for WWE. I've sent people out for trials for New Japan, Marvelous Wrestling, TNA. But to answer your question, there's 2 wrestlers that came through our doors, and we worked, or I went to go visit them. For a couple, Kevin Steen, to get ready for his tryout for the WWE, came to my school, and we worked together for about a month and a half to get him tryout ready. And as you know, he's one of the biggest stars in WWE. Brianna Brandy from Hit Row. We communicated. I went and visited her in the Dominican Republic and trained her there. She already had a tryout, but then after the training, she got signed. And then there's a gentleman named Sidney Eichmann. Sidney Bateman. Sidney Bateman. He was wrestling in WWE as Reggie. He had a background as an acrobat from the Cirque du Soleil, and he had a tryout. He came to my school. We worked together, and he's there too. So those are the 3 most prominent people that have came to the school. But I've trained more than easily 300 students. I've done seminars from Canada to the United States to Spain to England to Ireland. So
awesome.
I had noticed that it had listed that you trained at the New Japan Pro Wrestling Dojo in LA.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? I mean, wrestling is styles of wrestling.
That's correct.
That I mean, you have to adjust on the fly, and if not, you're left in the dust. Did you purposely wrestle it for or at the dojo to learn a different style, or just was it for the experience? Or
that was a great question. It's a combination of both. First, how I got there was we're at the 56th anniversary, NWA anniversary, and I was fighting Finn Balor, defending my title. And there was representatives of TNA that was there, and also of New Japan. Dave Marquez was there, and he saw our match. And after he saw our match, he invited us to the dojo. And I went there for the opportunity to, to ply my trade, to learn a new trade, like a new style of wrestling, and see if I had an opportunity to go to Japan to wrestle for the New Japan Pro Dojo. So going there, it was an eye-opening experience because they run their wrestling school just like a Japanese dojo. It's met with discipline, respect, hard work, good ethics, and you have to put the work in. Sweat was the equity. So, like just to give you a normal day, you get up at like maybe 7 o'clock and you just fill your stomach with food, like food that's going to help you survive the training. So, you load up, and then after that you hit weights from like maybe 8 to 9. And then at 9:30, you'd get on the mats, and then you would start off with maybe 15 minutes of skip rope. And then after that, calisthenics to warm up. And then you would start with 1,500 push-ups, 1,500 Hindu squats, 1,500 crunches. With 500, take a break, 500, take a minute break, 500, take a minute break. And you had to go through that. Then you had to wrestle for about an hour and a half.
Well, if you're breaking it up into 500, that's easy.
Yeah. No, it explains. So, 1,500. And the thing is, I could tell you for a fact, I was never able to do the 1,500, but they were looking for effort. Like, I never quit. That was one of the things that they saw and that they liked about me. You know what I mean? I still attempted it. And sometimes, by the time, because I was there for a month, by the time I was finished, I was able to do all the rolls, all the judo style bumps. And after the wrestling, so you had the gym, you had the weight training in the morning. Then right after that, you had the calisthenics. Then right after that, you had to wrestle for about an hour and a half. Then you had like a 1 hour break. And then the second part of the training was a combination of either, depending on the day, Muay Thai boxing, MMA. What else was there? It was another jiu-jitsu. Like we had the gentleman, what's the referee? His name is Herb Dean. That's from the UFC.
Yeah.
All right. He was there teaching the MMA course. They had another specialist that would come in to do the Muay Thai. Then they had another specialist that would be doing the grappling. Then you had 1 day of yoga. And then they had a gentleman, his name was Ken Yasuda. He was a IFBB pro bodybuilder. And he would be coming in on the Friday for strength and conditioning. And Friday would be a half day. So you'd have the strength and conditioning. You would have some wrestling. And then the second part of the day, you had to run. So they would find either a soccer field or they had this ungodly stairway. I called it the stairway to hell, but it was going upwards and you had to run it up and down. And if you could do that, like if you were an Olympian, you could do it 10 times. And it was just grueling, but it was rewarding at the same time because it taught me that things that I thought I was capable of, I was able to. Like, if you would have told me before, okay, you're going to go do 1,500 push-ups, I would have been like, you're crazy. And, I had a background in football. I played football up to semi-pro. And, I've even went for an NFL tryout. And I've had tough trainings before, but by far that was the most grueling, consistent piece of training I've ever had. And it was rewarding because when I came back, I changed the whole concept of how my school was run. Because prior to that, I've only had 1 year of having a school. I was only a wrestler 5 years in, so I didn't really have the experience. But I'm a very good motivator, and I work well with the youth. and I'm a good listener, and I'll watch, and I try to replicate all the different aspects of schooling that I've learned on the physical level. So when I came back from the New Japan Dojo, my school was doing things that the other schools locally didn't have a concept of, because they never ventured. They were never in those positions. The only way you can get better is if you hang with the best and train with the best and learn from the best. Then you can come back and then teach the best to your students. So that's what I've been trying to accomplish for the last 21 years.
You know, that story of the stairwell reminds me, like, I remember Ric Flair telling a story about how he trained under, originally, I think it's Vern Gagne.
Yeah.
And going up and down that stairs in some old, terrible building, and just at the end of one day, just going, you know, that's it, I'm out of here, and going home. And Gagne knocking on the door, what do you think you're doing? Get back in the stairwell, right?
Yeah.
And and just the, you know, everybody, like in the class that Flair was with was unbelievable as well, right? Just those guys but throwing up in the stairwell, and I can only imagine. I'm better you than me, my friend.
And it's crazy because my class consisted of Finn Balor was in that class, Alex Kozlov was there, Rocky Romero was there. The gentleman who won the first Tough Enough, he tried to shoot on Kurt Angle on TV.
Oh,
yeah, he was my training partner. He was kicking my ass. Like, I have a background in grappling, and I'm a pretty good handler. I felt so. He was trained by Frank Shamrock, and when it was grappling class, I would gravitate to him because he would routinely kick my ass. And whereas most people would try to run away from opposition, I love to face it. So anytime I got my ass kicked by anybody, in fact, Herb Dean and I, we were doing boxing, and in the first practice, he left me with a shiner. And I was like, okay, I can't wait till I see him tomorrow. And so it was Herb Dean. It was Daniel Pewter, Alex Kozlov, Rocky Romero, Harley Jackson. I think his name is Hartley Jackson was there. Another Australian who ended up wrestling for NXT. Anyways, it was just an all-star class. So just being in that environment just made me a better person inside and outside the ring.
I wanted to ask about the North American Championship and how you ended up for that. And just for context for any of those who are listening right now, the NWA North American Heavyweight Championship, very much especially during your time as champion, in that area, and I imagine that you went into the NWA, in my head, it's like the Ernie Todd era into the Robert Trovich era.
That's correct.
So,
that's correct.
But for that particular title, it really meant, and you know, for guys like Steve Corino, for example, you jump into the North American title, and a few weeks later, or not that much longer down the road, you'd be looking at the 10 pounds of gold. So that's an investment that the NWA has made in you. They've decided you're on that cusp. You're going to hold that championship. You hold it for, I think, over 450 odd days or something. A lot of days. How did you get into the North American title scene? And like, how was the decision made? That's what's going to, you know, Drew's going to be the holder for this. And did you think that there was going to be, you know, a real shot that you might be world's heavyweight champion?
You know, it's funny. I never even thought about being the world heavyweight champion. It just never crossed my mind. Like I said, all I wanted was a championship from the NWA, and up to that point, I've already had 3. So my bucket list was fixed. But to answer your question, the NWA loved my hustle. They loved how I conducted myself. You know, every time we met, I was always in a suit. I was always polite. I was always cordial. They saw my movements. They saw what I was doing with my promotion at that time. It was named NWA Quebec. And then I got voted in to the, I'm trying to figure out the name of it, the board of directors.
Right.
So I was, Dave Marquez loved my hustle. And he asked I to be voted into the board of directors for the NWA, which happened, which meant that I was with the board for at least 2 years at that time. And it's funny because as soon as that happened, I just felt a little bit conflicted. So I made sure that any titles that I had on me were off me, because I didn't want it to be that, oh, well, he's on the board of directors and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So there was a point at one of the meetings where they were complaining that the promoter at the time in Florida had the North American title and wasn't giving it up, was being difficult, couldn't find a possible date to drop the title. And the board of directors were just disgusted with it, and they're like, yo, man, what can we do? And I'm just like, why don't you grab the belt from him? Like, just take it. They're like, there's nobody that would, there's no way we could do it. And I said, okay, well, I know that the champion is fighting in this promotion against that person. I'll just go and pick it up. And they're like, what? I said, yeah, I'll go pick it up. And then once I get the title, I'll drop it off the next week to whoever you want me to do. And they're like, well, what happens if he doesn't want to give you the title? I'm like, I'm not really concerned about that. So I contacted the promotion that was hosting the event, told them that I'd like to be a part of it. How can that happen? And they were like, yeah, cool. In fact, they knew of my background as the British Commonwealth champion. And they're like, yeah, come on down. So I took my own money and I flew down and we made the match. So originally it was supposed to be a one-on-one. It became a triple threat. And within 6 minutes, I had the belt. So then once I got the belt back and I was going to drop it back, they're like, well, what are you doing? What's your game plan? I said, well, okay, well, I was going to go to Ireland and England for another tour. And I have a few other dates. They're like, well, why don't you defend the title there? So that's what happened. So then as soon as I got the title, 1 month later, I'm wrestling in Ireland and England and defending the title there. Right. Then I came back. Then I defended it in Tennessee. Then after that, the week after, I was in Vancouver. I defended it on 2 days. I fought the Honky Tonk Man, which was a funny story. I'll tell you a little bit later with that. He felt that, I should have dropped the title to him, but I'll tell you that later. And then I started defending it all around Quebec. And it was an integral and an important time for the NWA, because at that time, as you know, the world titles were being leased to TNA. So there was nobody really representing the NWA without the world title. But me having the North American title, now I'm all over the place and I'm defending that title. And yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, it was an incredible belt. Like, I mean, even just historically, it was great. There were some great names to even hold that belt. I know it's not the oldest belt in the NWA, but the names that you get to share that list with are great. But and what
Barry Windham, I think, had it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeff Jarrett.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, solid names there. But yeah, that's a great story. Jeremy, over to you.
Okay, so earlier we talked about how you and the Sheik were going to have a match, and that ended up not happening.
No, it did happen. We did have the match. I just didn't shoot on him for the belt.
Oh, okay. So, along that lines, though, what was a program or a match that was going to happen that that ended up not happening that you wish really would have?
Well, all right. Outside of the NWA, I was slated to fight Samoa Joe back in 2000, maybe 2006. I was really hyped for that because, Samoa Joe is one of the premier pro wrestlers in the world. And he was an agile big man. And at that time, I was an agile big man. I was able to do like enziguris and Vader bombs and cannonballs and drop kicks and stuff like that. So I really wanted to test my mettle against him. So that's one. As the world, I don't know. There was a couple of people that was in the NWA at the time that I would have loved to have fought. I'm just trying to figure out who during that timeline that was like I would have loved to fought Steve Corino, even though that was never put together. Right. Basically, most of the matches I was supposed to fight, I fought, so I didn't have an issue.
Okay.
You defended that. Was it North American or British Commonwealth on a house show for Impact? Well,
it was
Impact for NWA TNA.
Yeah, it was the North American.
It was North American.
Yeah, it was North American, and it was against geez, he was the bodyguard for. He was a tall dude. I can't remember the name. The name is going to come up to me. Carlito. Back in WWE, when Carlito first got to the WWE, he had a bodyguard. I can't remember his name. Anyways, we had a match there. It's online.
Nice, Dave. Over to you.
I was looking over some of the championships that you've held, and I do see some tag team championships. Do you prefer just wrestling as a single, or sometimes cutting your time in half and not having to just rely on yourself and having a tag team partner?
You know what? Even when you're in a tag team, you still got to rely on yourself at times. But I understand what you're saying. It's funny because the majority of my career has been singles, and I've attained a lot of championships as a single champion. But my love has always been tag team wrestling. So I always found it weird that my career, I wasn't a multiple tag team champion more so than singles. Because like I said, I grew up loving, hold on. I think my Amazon package. Anyways, I grew up loving Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, the Road Warriors, the British Bulldogs, the Hart Foundation. So I always wanted to be in a tag team. So I thought it was just something that was very interesting that I wasn't at the time. But
I always loved the look of the Bone Collectors, like when you guys would come out and just the I don't know, the look, the overall package, the just oozed coolness.
Yeah. Yeah. No, me and Mike Marston, we had a good run. We were 2-time Canadian tag team champions, and yeah, it was just really. It was a cool team, and the crowd always reacted to us. We always got good reactions, and we always had an emphasis of tag team moves. I think one of the biggest problems right now with most tag teams is 2 individual wrestlers working together. Whereas I always gravitated watching teams that worked as a cohesive unit. You know what I mean? So, like the Briscoes, and rest in peace. For Jay, but yeah, I was always fans of the teams that looked the same, dressed the same, and wrestled with tag team moves involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hart Foundation comes to mind as well for those guys.
Yeah.
Jay says, I think if you're looking back for that name, Jesus, aka Aaron Aguilera.
That's it. That was the gentleman that I fought. Yeah,
Willie
and that was the first time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, and that was the first time I wrestled at for the Impact at a house show, and it was cool because it was the first time I was in a collective with all the stars that you've seen on TV. Like I've wrestled past or former superstars, but it was the first time that I'm in a locker room and just watching the environment and how calm everybody was and the professional aspect. Nobody was screaming and yelling, because a lot of times when you go to an indie show, you know what I mean? People don't know how to behave because they've been never taught to behave a certain way. So they think it's just like, I don't know, like a frat house. So upon seeing that was something that I felt was very important in my locker rooms. And, you know, just the way how they booked the matches and how they had it on the wall. Like I stole the paper, like after I waited till like everybody was gone, and I just took the paper of how they booked and what was the process. And then I tried to emulate it for myself. So that way, 2 things would happen. We would try to duplicate what we were seeing and how to conduct themselves as the professionals. And then all the wrestlers that would come to our shows would then now take that back to where they go and try to replicate that. So by having that done now, it improves the quality of the wrestling that's happening in our province.
Right. We got about 10 minutes left with you before you go train.
You know what? I could actually go. I can stick around till 7:30, so we can
great.
go. We're good.
Yeah, fantastic.
Cool.
I wanted to ask about. This is a bit of a cheeky question, but I think you're an honest guy. What's your worst match of all time? Like, if you're like, oh, I stunk up that ring. Like, you know, you've had some good matches. They don't put titles around the waist of guys who can't go. what's the worst one that you did? I want to hear about the honky tonk man if you're allowed to share that on the.
Yeah, I can tell that he was a jerk, and it was sad. And no, he was a jerk. I couldn't believe it because I'll tell you why. My two favorite intercontinental champions of all time was Randy Savage, and the Honky Tonk Man, because I loved how they booked him. He never won a fight. He'd beat all the enhancement guys, and then he would either get disqualified, count out, anything to keep the belt. And I thought that was so entertaining as a child. Yep. So now imagine this. I'm in Vancouver. I get to meet one of my, I guess not idols, but one of my favorites I used to watch, because he wasn't an idol. But, you know, they always say, you know, be careful meeting your favorites or your idols. So now I walk up to him, and of course I put out my hand. And I said, "Hi, sir. I'm so-and-so. It's going to be a pleasure." And I think I almost said like on honor, you know what I mean, to work with you. He looked me up and down. And he said, "You know what? If the NWA had any sense, they would drop this title to me tonight." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, so how would this work out? He goes, "Well, you'll lose to me tonight, and then by the end of the tour, we'll figure out how to get the belt off me." So I had to look around to see if I was being punked. Like, where's the camera? So I told him, no, kind sir. We are definitely having this match, and I am walking out as the North American champion. So we devised something. We did like almost like a Eddie Guerrero thing before, like Eddie Guerrero. Not that we're the originator. I'm just saying I had a legal object. He got the legal object off me, hit me, and then stuffed it in his pants, right? And he pins me. So then the referee then says, you know, he's the winner. I said, no, he hit me. Check his tights. And when the referee found the tights, you know. But another thing that had me perturbed was I just came back from the New Japan Dojo. So it's, you know, we were talking about different styles and stuff like that. So yeah, just wrestling that style against him, he wasn't a fan of. Not that I was too stiff, but even my lockup, because the whole time I was at New Japan, it was all about tweaking your technical skill sets. So everything had to look aggressive and vicious, you know, without hurting the person. That's the art form of pro wrestling, to convince people that there's a fight without actually brutalizing the person that you're working with. And everything I was doing was too stiff. And he's like, ease up. And I'm like, oh my God. So, you know, at the end of the day, you're there to entertain the people who pay tickets to watch you perform. Right. So, you know, a lot of these older or former stars are just there for a paycheck. And I'm not saying that was totally the case, but I knew as the younger competitor, I had to bump like crazy and do all kinds of antics to get the match over. So after the match is over and I'm just there sitting on the apron, disappointed that one of my favorites was just, you know, two fans came up and they're like, "We saw what you did. We understand what you went through to make that match happen. Thank you." So I was like, okay, someone gets it. And it's sad because then I met him 2 other times, and every time I met him, it was just something like, now I'm somewhere in Ontario and he's wrestling for a promotion, and he walks in and he's like, comes in, I'm sitting down minding my own business, comes in and he's like, where's this guy? And I just turned around and said, "Hi, hello." And he's like, "What?" That's what you usually say when you walk into a room and you meet somebody, "Hi" or "hello." And he just gave me the most stink face and he walked out. And I was like, and then we had to have a match. So we're having a match and it's a 6-way. And the crowd is getting into it and it's good and everybody's bumping and he's screaming for it to get over because he wants to go to his hotel to relax because he has to leave in the morning, really, you know, for a flight elsewhere. And I was like, wow. I said, I hope I never get this bitter and disgruntled and unhappy. So that's my story with Honky Tonk. Like, and it's funny because I'm not usually one to throw people under, you know, the rug. And I don't think I said anything too vicious, but it's just about perspective. Like, who knows? Maybe he was having a bad day. Maybe there was an emergency. I don't know. But just based on my interaction with him, I was sad. If I had a Honky Tonk doll, I'd definitely sell it.
Let's see what they say in the chat here before we go to, I think it's Jeremy. You're up. Media says, hey, listen, like Drew, and he corrects your name afterwards here. But Drew is right. Honky can be an arrogant prick. And Jason J. Cal says Honky doesn't take bumps. That's that's his major problem. So yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So I was bumping like crazy, like a piñata, like a 300-pound piñata.
You got to get live. What is that? You got to get what? I don't know. I don't know what that is, Jay.
You got to get live before my finish, brother.
Yeah, I don't know. Lucky.
But I'll tell you what. One positive note, which I didn't. When he hit me with the shake, rattle, roll, I giggled. I was like, "Oh my god, I've seen this."
You're like, "This is awesome."
Yeah, and a couple of times. I fought also the Hammer, Greg Valentine, and I'm wrestling him as Soa. And I walk in, and it was a change booking because whoever originally wanted to fight him, he's like, I don't want to fight him. Drew, you fight him. And I'm like, okay. So, and ironically, because I knew he was on the card, something just told me, hey, grab one of the DVDs and just watch. So I watched like maybe 7 or 8 matches of Greg the Hammer without realizing that I was going to wrestle him that Saturday. So I see him, and I see, I come up to him, I'm like, hey, sir, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, so you got the Abbey gimmick. I go, yeah, but I don't blade or anything like that. I actually wrestle. And he's like, okay. So I'm sitting down now we're in the locker room, and I'm sitting down on the bench, and I watch him, and he just got his payoff, and he stuffs it in his boot. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's old school. You know what I mean? He's making sure that no one takes his money. Then 20 seconds later, he counts the money again, and then he puts it in his other boot. I'm like, okay, he wants to make sure that the promoter doesn't stiff him. And the promoter was on the up and up, but I'm like, okay, whatever. Then he pulls it out again, and he does this like 15 times straight from boot to boot. And I'm like, this man has OCD or something. Like, I'm like, this is the guy I have to fight? I'm like, all right. So anyways, we get into the match, and the match is as well as it could be, for the situation. But then I remembered all the things that he used to do. So then I start positioning myself when he was taking over in the match. I start positioning myself in certain situations where it would make him automatically go into some of the things that he was doing. And as soon as he realized that's what I was doing, it's like the light went on in his eyes, and we're back to WrestleMania 2. This guy was alive, and he's bumping me, and he's doing this and doing that. And then he hits me with like a clothesline. I take the bump, and I keep my leg up for the figure 4. He grabs it, and he looks around, and I was like, wow, I'm a kid again. How many times have I seen this guy slap the figure 4 on somebody? Right. And I just reacted like he tried to break my legs. Anyways.
That's amazing. I love that story. Jeremy, over to you.
Okay, so we've talked about your worst match. What was your best match or feud?
Oh, geez. I had a couple. In the NWA, most definitely was with Finn Balor. We had a match in 2004. I think it was October 25th, if I'm correct. And it was in Wales. And we're in Wales. Small little club. When I say small, we had to dress like in the alley. Like, no, the dressing room for like 20 wrestlers was no bigger than like a large closet. And we're getting ready for this place. And prior to this, we're talking about, okay, what we're going to do, because it's for the British Commonwealth Championship. And it's funny because Andre Baker comes up to me, and here's a little story about Andre Baker. Like, good man, good promoter, hell of a wrestler, one of the greatest coaches of all time. But apparently he went up to, and I say apparently because I don't know, apparently he went up to Steve Corino and basically very politely told him that he's dropping the world title today to one of his guys. And Corino allegedly slipped off the ladder and knocked himself out and, wasn't the champion. So I knew that, he had that reputation. So it's really how you're going to react to him. So he comes up to me and he's like, we want Finn to win the belt. I'm like, no problem. Just once I get it before the tour leaves. And because I think I was so calm and cool about it and nonchalant prior to that, I've heard the story before, you know what I mean? He looked at me, acknowledged it, and said, all right, this guy's willing to work. Right. And then, then he hooked me up later, and I'll explain after. So we're having this match. I'm going to drop the title off to Finn, and we're walking around, and there's like a balcony type of situation on top. And he's like, "Oh, wouldn't it be crazy if I jumped off that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." So we're having this no disqualification match, and there's like about 200 people, but it's really like a Fight Club type of vibe. And we're going at it, and the crowd is going off. They haven't seen this stuff, all these big moves. And because I trusted Finn and he trusted me, I told him, go stiff, go. So the kicks were coming in, sweat's flying off my body. It was just crazy. And now we're brawling into the crowd, and I can't find him. I go back into the ring, and I see him on this balcony thing, like kind of measuring and I'm like, oh my God, he's going to jump. He's going to jump. He's going to jump off that thing into the ring. I'm going to die. I said, if I leave, like my first instinct was flight. It was like, I got to get out of here. But if he jumps, he dies. But if I catch him, we might both die. I'm like, oh my God. And this is all happening in a span of like a nanosecond. This guy flies off, flying body press, hits me. We hit the ground. The crowd erupted. And this is where experience comes in, because that should have been the end. That the pop that we got from the crowd was so loud, anything else happens, it wouldn't be the same thing. So just to prove that, I kicked out at like a 2.5. The crowd reacted, but our finish didn't measure to what that pop did. So the finish was like a bicycle kick, a nice little cute sequence, bicycle, and he pinned me, and he did get the pop, but it wasn't bigger than that pop. So that taught me, you know, when you book a match, you got to really feel the crowd. And if you got the crowd, that's it. It's like it's no different than a comedian on stage, and you hit them with a big joke, and they're laughing, and then you try to hit them with a joke that's just not as funny. So, anyways, that was one of my best. Fighting him was always good. I never had a problem. Him, Paul Tracy, also another Irish wrestler and a great coach. Those were nights off.
Okay.
Right. Dave, what do you got for us?
I had noticed that you had wrestled PCO. What do you think of his comeback and his new character? I mean, he was always a great wrestler, but he never really seemed to hit. And now that he's doing his perfect creation character, I mean, it's wild to me how his career has just blossomed again.
Yeah, no, kudos to him, because one thing about him that I always noticed is that he was constantly trying to evolve the characters, trying to figure out what kind of characters would get over. And if one didn't work, then he'd go back to the drawing board, work on it, tweak it, and stuff like that. Also, I think it's amazing that the fact that, he had a second chance, a second opportunity. And because he's he's consistent as a worker, and he's willing to, do things that shows how much he has a love for this passion, a love for this business, and a passion for it. It transcends, and people see that. And now he has that fan base. Now he has that following now. And it's cool because what you may not know is that he would come to the school from time to time before his ROH matches just to get a tune-up, to work out a little bit with some of my guys. Now he has his own ring, and so, but he would travel like about an hour and a half to get to my school and, grab a couple of my guys and just work on stuff. Or even if he wasn't grabbing guys, just working out stuff. And I'm totally happy for him. At first, I didn't understand the gimmick, or I didn't understand why the crowd got into the gimmick. But the more I saw it, the more I understood it. And it's not even for me to understand, or the guys in the back. It's for the crowd. Once the crowd gets it, you know what I mean? That's where everything works out. So I'm happy for that dude. I'm glad for him.
To that point, like, I didn't originally get it either. I actually had to search out a video that explained how he was brought back to life by his, basically the evil scientist who shocks him to life like a Frankenstein monster.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he's great. And it's amazing to see the renaissance he's had in the last few years. He won the Crockett Cup a few years ago with
the Crockett Cup. I think he won the ROH tag team, the ROH triple, or maybe the triple tag team. He won the ROH World Heavyweight. In fact, he came to the school and spoke to my students while he had while he was still the champion. He brought the belt and answered all their questions and stuff like that. It's, class act.
That's great. So you're wrestling now, and you generally, I think, sort of stay in the Ontario, Quebec, sort of maybe northern U.S. area when you're that's your home base, so to speak. I know you travel all over the place. But where are you wrestling now? And just for Sam in the chat here, tell us about Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling Dojo and the shows that you guys are putting on.
All right, so yeah, I do wrestle in the Ontario, Quebec for right now. I was never comfortable wrestling in the States unless I had a green card or permission or whatever the case is. Going for trials, like I wrestled for ROH during the Winter War back in 2000, maybe 15. But other than that, I try to stay local because I just don't want issues. You hear too many wrestlers get banned for 10 years for wrestling in the States and stuff like that when they don't have the paper. So I try to avoid that. Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling Dojo, it's we run some shows, and it's not just our students, but it's usually our alumni, the guys who just graduate, and some local Quebec stars, and we get together and we do a show once a month in my hometown, which is cool now because after the pandemic, I wasn't going to run any shows because I was like, not stressed, but the work that's involved to do it. And, I'm all about attention to detail and I nitpick on everything. And I'm like, do I really want the stress? And two of my former students who wrestle now, and Johnny Taco and Wilson Colas. Wilson Colas is one half of the NWA tag team champions. And they'd be like, you guys, you got to run shows. 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 So I'm like, fine, I'm going to do it. But if I do it, I'm only going to do it in my hometown. So our first show was Straight Outta Chamber in October. And I've been blessed. The last three shows have been full houses. And the one thing that everybody is talking about is how the storylines are entertaining and they make sense. They're logical. The wrestlers look like wrestlers. You're not going to see any guys wearing torn up jeans and sneakers. The presentation, we try to ball with a budget. We don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars. We don't have major sponsors, but the ring looks professional. Our the MC of the night, gentleman's name is Navid. He comes in always looking very smart, looking neat. Just the presentation of the show. You don't get that indie feel. Like I try to replicate what I saw at NXT. I had an opportunity to be an agent backstage for two of their shows when I went down to Orlando as a guest coach for the WWE for the Performance Center. So when I went down there, they liked and respected my work so much when I was training the people that they gave me an opportunity to be an agent. And being an agent meant like being in the back and giving the minutes. So while the referee is in the ring with the earpiece, I'm the gentleman in the back that's giving him the countdown. 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left, 3 minutes left. So he can convey it to the competitors inside the ring. Or if there's a commercial, then tell them, okay, it's a commercial now. Or, or whatever information that he needed to know. And then I would have Norman Smiley right next to me, and he'd be like taking down the information to send it to Triple H. So, who won, how they conducted themselves. Did they listen to the agent? Because prior to the match, I would have to go to the two competitors, tell them the instructions that the NXT booking wanted, give them any ideas or insight if they needed. So that was that whole experience was very interesting because, I always pride myself as a very good coach. I am considered one of the top coaches in my area, and I know I'm good. And I say that with confidence but being humble. But you always want to know how good you are. It's almost like the equivalent of you're a coach for a university. You've won the Orange Bowl, you won the Sun Bowl, you won the Cotton Bowl. But now you get a call from the Dallas Cowboys, and now they want you to come up and train some of their offensive linemen there. So you level up. So but it was a great experience. It's eye-opening. And all those places, whether I went to the New Japan, going to TNA, wrestling at ROH, going to the tryouts, going to the Performance Center, I always took bits and pieces just to add to my repertoire in order to be able to teach, my students.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Cool.
Jeremy, I think you're up. And I didn't skip you, did I, Dave?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Jeremy, I think you're up, man.
Okay, so speaking of experiences and traveling, tell us a little bit about your time in UK's Hammerlock.
That was a cool experience. How I got on that tour, I used to go to a gym to work out, and it was the same gym that the WWE stars would go when they were in town. And I had an opportunity to run into Eddie Guerrero, God bless the dead. And I spoke to him, and he was impressed with the fact that I didn't come off like a mark. I was inquiring about all his history as Black Tiger in New Japan. So that caught his attention. And basically I asked him, what can I do to get to the next level? Not necessarily WWE, but I told him specifically, I want to go to Europe. I want to go to Japan. I want to wrestle, because I felt like I had to go through the same route that almost Mick Foley did. I wasn't the biggest guy. I wasn't the strong. I wasn't more muscular. I didn't have that that typical, body, but I felt like my body of work will compensate in the fact that I'm very good at interacting with the crowd, and I know how to work the mic. I knew I had some skill sets that could have me, get to the next level. And he just told me, it's no different than, shopping for a job, man. Send your CV everywhere. It goes, at that time, the internet, use the internet, contact people, email people, send them, matches. And one cool thing that I got from one of the bushwhackers, whichever one that was running in Puerto Rico, he said, don't send me videos of you beating people. I want to see how you take a beating, how you sell, how you give, because wrestling is two people working together. But a lot of people will send video of just their highlights, but they want to see how you sell. They want to see how you bump. They want to see how you work the crowd. They want to see your psychology. And some of the best times people can see your wrestling psychology is when you're in the defensive. So I remember thanking Eddie and then just sending out film that I had. And I contacted Andre Baker. And I asked Andre Baker, and the first thing he said is who you remind me of? And I said, yeah, Abdullah the Butcher, because all the old school wrestlers that I ran into, from Smith Hart to one of the Ledukes, not Joe Leduc, but his tag team partner, all of them were saying, you remind me of a young Abby when he was in shape and he was going out and stuff like that. And I didn't know how I felt about that, but I said, Abdullah the Butcher. He's like, do you have Abdullah the Butcher gear? And I didn't, but I told him yes. I'm like, yeah. He goes, okay. Well, listen, I don't know if you're good or not, because I asked, accommodations, pay, stuff like that. He goes, we could provide accommodation, but as far as pay, see this as like a work experience, like a, intern. So I was like, all right. So I had to figure out how to get a flight to there. And now, since I lied to this gentleman, I got to figure out how to get some Abdullah gear. So luckily, the person who did my boots and premier top boot maker for wrestling, a gentleman named Gus, Sami Zayn gets his boot. Everybody, who's who in Montreal gets the boots from this dude. So I'm like, I'm in trouble now. I got to go get some the tip boots and stuff like that. So as I walk to his store to go downstairs, in the display, I see these curled boots. And I'm like, how is that possible? So I asked him, he goes, oh, those are for circus entertainers and stuff like that. So I ordered that. I had a friend whose girlfriend was the seamstress. I got the pants and everything. I got the headgear, all that stuff, scrounged together at that time. Because at that time, I don't even think I was working. I think I was just working on, I was getting paid just only on wrestling. Got down there, got to Heathrow Airport. Wasn't even sure he was going to show up. He shows up with a couple of people. We get into the van. We go to Kent. We go to Kent in England. And my first match was in front of 500 people in this big hall against Finn Balor, Fergal Devitt, and Paul Tracy, against me and this other guy in the tag team. And that match went well. And then when Andre saw the reaction of how the crowd liked, and I was a babyface because since we were in England, and Paul Tracy and Fergal Devitt, Finn Balor are both Irish, they were the villains. So, you know, I was tagged with one of the local wrestlers, and the crowd exploded. And then when it came to intermission to do pictures, the lineup was like there was about 50 people lined up to take pictures with me. So when Andre Baker saw the lineup and saw people wanted to take pictures with me, he came up to me and goes, listen, after the cost of the camera, we split it half. So that night, even though I wasn't going to get paid, he was charging like 10 pounds. 10 pounds is like $25. Yeah. So $25 split in half, you know, $15 times 50, I made my payoff. And that's how I got paid. And then the first night I was supposed to stay over at one of the wrestlers' house. Now this wrestler just came back from the Middle East, from war, and this guy had like PTSD, and this guy was screaming and yelling and all kinds of nonsense. And I'm here in the house with this guy in a sleeping bag, and I'm like, I hope this guy doesn't sleepwalk with his gun. So I told Andre, I said, Andre, you got to get me out of that. So he put me up in a hotel. I got paid off every night of the pictures, and because I did so well with those guys, two things happened. At the end of the tour, it was a 1-week tour. I took them out for dinner, Paul Tracy and Fergal Devitt, just to thank them for making me look so good. They had their own promotion in Ireland, and they asked if I would come down to Ireland. I said, yeah, if you come down to Montreal. So that's how we started to connect and become friends. And Andre liked my work so much, he said, okay, in a couple of months, I'm going to call you back for a 2-week tour. I said, all right, cool. He goes, and I'm going to put the UK belt on you. And I was like, wow. So that's how I got the UK. So coming back, the second tour, it was 2 weeks now. And once again, he asked me to drop the title to Fergal, which I did. And as I dropped the British Commonwealth to him, I then later picked up the UK. And then that's how I became the UK, the British Commonwealth. And back home, I was the Quebec champion. So right. I believe I was the first NWA Triple Crown champion before the Sheik. The Sheik later said that he was the world, the North American, and then another regional belt. But I think I beat him by 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Cahagas. Cahagas claims that, right?
Yeah. And they all did.
World. Yeah. Yeah, they all did.
But not before I did.
Right.
I could be wrong. Check the timelines, but that's it.
Yeah.
But, working for Andre was cool. That was a cool situation.
Let me ask before I throw it to you, Scooby. Did you ever meet Abdullah? And if so, did he sign off on it?
Yeah. First, he heard about me. And somebody asked him, and it was on a radio interview and or a podcast interview. He goes, yeah, I've seen his work. I love his work. He's doing good things. And then I met him because he came down to Montreal because he was about to receive an award at a promotion that I was wrestling at.
Yeah.
So I walked up to him and I say, hey, Abby, how you doing? And this and that. And he's like, so he goes, kid, are you as good as me? I'm like, once again, trying to be respectful. I'm like, I can't be better than the original. He goes, then what's the point of you doing it? He goes, if you're going to do something as the best. If I was the best, you got to be better than me. And I'm like, okay. And that was it. So he was real cool about that. And so on the both occasions, so he signed off on it. He was okay. And it's crazy because I was able to do him some more justice because Vice TV had two programs, Tales of what's it called?
The Territories and
Dark Side of the Ring.
Yeah.
And both those shows, I had an opportunity to be Abdullah the Butcher in those stories.
Cool.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Awesome.
Dave, over to you. About 10 minutes left.
Okay. I watched some of your wrestling on YouTube, and I mean, you can hang with basically anybody. but do you prefer a specific type of wrestling? I mean, I watch MLW, and I mean it's a buffet of wrestling. You have your high flyers. They even have some garbage matches, stuff like that. Is there a specific type of wrestling in that you've experienced all these different types of wrestling in all these different areas? Is there a specific type of wrestling that you prefer, or do you just basically go with the flow and whatever's needed at wherever you are, you basically adapt?
Well, yeah, no. Like I said, you got to read the crowd, but you still got to bring what's original. Like when I went to New Japan Pro Wrestling, we were taught their style so you can understand their style, but then incorporate yours. A lot of people have this misconception that if I go to New Japan, I got to show them strong style. Why? There's already 50 wrestlers on the roster that does that. They're looking for an exception to the rule that can work within the rules. So I've been in hardcore feds before, and I would integrate my style. Like I like wrestling. I like wrestling. It's the funniest thing, because if you look at the majority of my career, I'm more of a brawler power. But I've always loved the technical side. The emphasis at my school is technical wrestling, a lot of catch-based wrestling, a lot of reversals and transitions. And you could look on YouTube at my school, some of the variations that I teach. I like that. And I don't incorporate it a lot for the simple fact that a lot of people that I wrestle can't do that. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that in a bad way. So I try to work their positives. So if they're positives, like what's the point of me putting somebody in a quarter Nelson if they can't get out of it? Do you understand? So depending who I'm wrestling and how I'm wrestling and what is the story that we want to tell to help enhance the show, I'll go with. So like I said, I tend to brawl more, which is funny because when I was a kid, I hated brawler. I couldn't appreciate, like, just say the Sheik or Abdullah the Butcher. Like all they do is punch and kick, or even Bruno Sammartino. Like there's some punch. But then as I got more knowledge and I understood, and it's an art form. You know, watching Brody and Stance and punch and kick. First of all, that will tire you out quicker than anything else. And second, there's a science to it. So I started to learn and to appreciate that and try to integrate it. But depending on what's needed, I will do and adapt. But for the most part, I always prefer, like, one of my favorite wrestlers is Regal. I love watching Regal. I love watching Dynamite. I just saw a match with Regal versus Davey Boy Smith. I think WCW back in '93. It's a masterclass. Like, I love that stuff. I love watching two guys who could wrestle their ass off. I could sit there and watch that all day.
He's amazing.
Cool.
You know, that brawling style too. I was very lucky because the first match I ever remember seeing was Abdullah the Butcher versus Bruiser Brody on TV out of Al Tomko's All-Star Wrestling, which was an NWA out west, right?
Yeah.
And I know Abby and Bruiser were also out near you a lot of the time in the Montreal area as well. But it is an art form and it's tough to do. Listen, man, this has been amazing. I know you got to go in a couple of minutes. I'm going to put your social media stuff across the bottom of the screen, but do you want to pitch where you are on the web and what's going on with you in the promotion, the school?
So if anybody wants to find out about the school, on Instagram, it's Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling. The school is TC Pro Dojo on Instagram. On Facebook, you can find us, Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling Dojo. And the wrestling promotion is called the world's wrestling's most dangerous group. So you can check that out. The information is going to be at the bottom. We're having new classes in February. So already some students started to come in. We take about 10 to 12 students per session every 6 months. Our next show is going to be listed soon on our shows. Is Showcase 21. We like to wrestle. Our events are on Sunday, so it gives an opportunity for my wrestlers to wrestle at other places, so it's not always conflicted. It's an afternoon show, and people love to come check it out. I just want to give you guys a shout out. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to tell some stories I've never told before, and to also be able to promote my promotion and school. And I'd like to wish you guys all the best with this podcast. And I demand that I come back again.
Absolutely, your demand will be heeded.
Yeah,
absolutely
Yes.
heeded, sir. Listen, for
Definitely.
those who don't know, and I like to say this just about, we haven't talked online in like a year and a half. Last time it was like we couldn't hear each other. It was brutal.
Yeah.
But obviously technology has improved. But, you know, the reason that NWA Gold exists is because of two people, like that it just didn't sputter out. You're one and Jay Cal's the other. And,
I didn't know that.
There's like 75 belt bios on my site right now, and it's because you jumped in early and said, hey, do you want to talk about the NWA British Commonwealth title? I also got the Canadian tag team titles, and it just, hey, wow, this is amazing. And you know, you're obviously a great teacher to your students, and I appreciate what you've meant to NWA Gold. And I know Jay really appreciates your presence with the Alliance as well. So thank you for coming on, man, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Be safe, be well. Best to you and yours, and we'll talk to you soon.
All the best, guys. Guys, have a good night.
All right, thank you. Dru Onyx, everybody. Amazing guy, amazing interview. I had a good time with that, guys.
That was fun.
Yeah. Hey, Jeremy, are you doing championship wrestling from Jeremy today?
Not today.
Tell us, because we're coming up on the Grind City Rumble. That's episode 101, I think, in Memphis.
Yes.
And I think that's 3 days from now.
Yep.
So they've been kind of leading up to that. But did you see that match? We'll just talk about it for a sec, where the Memphis Heritage title, changed hands.
And new.
Unreal, man. Like I'm forgetting his name now, the previous champion.
Mike Anthony. It's
comes
a
out,
nightmare.
kicks the gun show's ass around the ring for about 5 minutes, rolls him in, gun show lariat. 1, 2, 3. I was just, wow, that was a great finish. I enjoyed the match. Didn't see it coming out of, just kind of came right out of nowhere.
I didn't either, and I was so surprised because Dustin had put up a poll on YouTube, and it was is the gun show going to win, or is Mike Anthony going to retain? And I commented that I would love to see the gun show win, but if the odds started leaning more in the gun show's favor, I definitely saw Mike Anthony coming out with a insurance policy or a backup plan of sorts, and nothing anywhere near that happened. Like you said, it was an ass whooping for about 5 minutes around the ring, and then boom, gunshot lariat, and it was done.
Yeah, it was a cool finish just because it's been a long time since I can remember seeing something like that happen.
Yeah, and it that's what it reminded me of, though. That it reminded me of that the mid to late 80s where you were expecting this to happen, and they would just completely swerve you without a swerve. That's the great thing about it, because I was swerved and there was no swerve to it.
It just happens.
It just happened, and that right there, that is what keeps me coming back every Monday or every Saturday to Championship Wrestling from Memphis. The blue walls be damned.
I'm going to say we got to open.
Great.
We got to open some kind of, Kickstarter or GoFundMe to get like cans of paint down to the stars down there to paint that place, because it's brutal. But no more. I'm built different as champion. That's just.
But for how long though? Because he picked up his bag real quick and retreated, and that typically. That's not a good sign from a coward heel like that. That means that they're instantly going back to the drawing board.
And it sounds almost contrary to like to say that kind of ending won't hurt him, but it won't.
It won't.
It's just he can come back with and just be like, you got a lucky shot. It's 1 in a million, right?
Yeah.
You'll never do it again.
Yeah.
So Yeah, here's what Doty to be campaigned to Billy to work with Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling. How do you plan to bring NWA to Quebec? Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, Billy's probably got some moves he could be making north of the border. I'd go over to Quebec for that.
I'd come up to Canada for it.
Yeah, it'd be great. I got to go over there. Huh?
Poutine.
Yeah.
Wrestling and poutine.
Wrestling and poutine.
There you go.
The poutine wrestling dojo. That's I'd sell out everything. The Memphis layout media says reminds me of a high school bathroom. Yeah, we know. What's happening with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood? They're going to air the Red Carpet Rumble now, right?
I believe so. I'm not 100% on that yet, but I do believe that is the plan, is that's going to air, and we'll be able to see that, and it'll be broken up over a course of a couple weeks, I believe.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Well, we'll look forward to that. We'll have a lot to talk about next week when these things air for sure. Let's do some fantasy book. With Dave Scooby. I respect you, Booker, man. So, Dave, your question to pose to our people out there in the chat tonight. If Matt Cardona should lose to Tyrus, should he and Brian Myers tag as the major players and maybe go after La Rebellion and the NWA World Tag Team titles? What are you thinking?
The more I think about it, I mean, it could go 50-50. I mean, Cardona could win, but what does that say about Tyrus? Billy put the belt on Tyrus. I don't know what the reasoning is. It's definitely for the exposure of seeing the belt on TV, but it's not on NWA. It's on a Fox program that the crossover is minimal that I know of. It all depends on what goes down at Nuff Said.
Right.
Now, I know they're having the signings at the Live Power next Tuesday. I will be there. And if you've ever watched any contract signings in any wrestling organization, there's going to be something screwy happen.
Right.
Yep.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm warming up to giving Cardona a second chance at the belt.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
But it all depends on where they go. That if he loses, I mean, he's lost to Rolando a couple times. He came back, whooped his ass. Depending on where they're going, if they are going to have a Crockett Cup this year, they're short on tag teams.
Mm-hmm.
So if Cardona loses, he's out of the picture. Murdoch still has his rematch clause, so they can do a different story, or they can bring someone else in to go after Tyrus. If Matt loses, he can just go ballistic. Meyer comes to his side and says, you don't need the 10 pounds of gold. We need to go after the tag belts ourselves. And the way to do that is an Impact. We're proving ourselves. We need to defeat any and all teams here, and they need to say, we're going to be the first team that enters the Crockett Cup.
Right.
They end up, I mean, with one or two good wins, and then the Crockett Cup, if they get another 3 or 4, if they win the Crockett Cup, they can then put the Crockett Cup up against the tag belts. Nothing against La Rebellion, but they've sort of fizzled out. They're a good team, but they're relying too much on Damien with the Mist. Maybe it's time for another change of tag belts. You put the tag belts on Cardona. He can hold it, build up, and at, who knows, maybe at 75, he comes out and says, I already have the tag belt. Whoever the champion is, he goes after the champion, that he wants the 10 pounds of gold. So he can be 2-belt NWA champion, tag belt, and 10 pounds.
Who's done that before? Rob Conway did that. Did Jack Stain do that? Maybe he did. Iron Gods?
I believe so.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have no idea what Billy has in store for Tyrus. I don't think anybody has any idea. Having him as champion, I mean, it wouldn't be bad if he were defending the belt. But then I also look at it as the Champion Series sort of put a halt to anybody defending belts in the NWA.
Right.
So it's one of these 6 of one, half dozen of another. Nobody has defended belts within the NWA besides, I believe, Clearwater.
Right.
But right after the last pay-per-view, they had a couple weeks, and then they kicked into the tapings of the Championship Series, which it isn't bad, but it's one of these things that it sort of put a halt to any forward momentum. And after the Championship Series, we haven't had any wrestling for the last 3 weeks, either on Tuesdays on Power, and there has not been any USA. I can't believe that they can't do a road to, enough said, a road to the Crockett Cup, best of Champion Series, where you re-show some matches. Or I wouldn't mind seeing, I've seen basically everything that the NWA has put out, but why not do a best of champions show where, hey, here's 3 or 4 matches highlighting Camille.
You know, the UWN just did this in front of Championship Wrestling for Hollywood, which I started getting into more because of this lull, and I wanted to be able to speak intelligently to what Jeremy was talking about with the UWN. But that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
They said, here's our world champion and his role here, like his progressing towards championship. Like here's Danny Limelight, here's Reno Scum, here's and took their different champs and just made it in a show. And I was intrigued. I wanted to see, allows me to catch up. Just do that.
And it's one of these things of, I'm actually liking the interviewing, the show, the NWA Presents.
Yep.
But that's the kind of stuff that when they were on Fight, that could have been the extra.
Yep.
That, hey, tune in here for, hey, Friday night or Saturday night or a Sunday night, sit down. It's NWA Presents, wrestlers from the past telling their stories. And I mean, there's enough wrestlers that the NWA have brought in that they could do one a month.
Yep.
And they could run, it doesn't have to be a 2-part series. It could just be sit down and for 2 hours we talk with Medusa. Sit down for 2 hours, we talk with Pat Kenny, who some of you may know as Simon Diamond.
Right.
It's not always about the NWA, but NWA is the basis for all wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's so many things that people say of, oh, well, he's a former WWF or WWE guy, or they were on Impact, or they were here. Well, it's not like baseball where it's one team.
Yeah.
You're by yourself. You're part of a crew under the umbrella of whatever wrestling organization you belong to. It's one of these things of, I mean, they can do some of the people that help run the NWA. They could do some current. I mean, I've seen so many Matt Cardona interviews, and granted, he says a lot of the same things, but he's asked a lot of the same things. But I'd like to know, I saw online that he actually put in for the rights to Zack Ryder.
Yeah. Woo, woo, woo.
And woo, 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 you know it.
Yeah.
He's looking out for himself. Those were him under the WWE umbrella. But if the WWE isn't keeping those and they're able to get them back, hey, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of your legacy. It's one of these things of I'm just the interviews that they've done have been good, but I'm chomping at the bit to watch wrestling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, next Tuesday, yeah, they're having the wedding, and I hope I don't get thrown out for speaking my mind.
I gotta wait. I gotta listen. I'm
going to be listening so close.
I'm just going to be like, okay, even with all the hodgepodge of stuff that they're having, I don't know if it's going to be an hour episode, an hour and a half, Superpower. Right. I believe they're going to do some tapings, but then they have the Nuff Said and 2 tapings 2 weeks later, or less than 2 weeks later, within a 2-week period. So you look at that. They're building that hopefully it can go every 5 to 6 weeks with the NWA, whether they do a pay-per-view or a special wrestling event, and then do some tapings, that they can keep the storylines fresh. And I mean, I don't know if they could actually do, Cardona was saying, hey, let's tape every week. That'd be nice. But at this time, I'd be happy with every 5 to 6 weeks instead of every 9 to 10 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, there was that recent article that followed the interest in the NWA's 500% more than it was a year ago from Billy Corgan, where the one that followed was, I think it was with Yahoo or something. But anyway, like it was, the NWA can rise to international dominance or prominence or whatever it was again. But not the way we do things, not the way they do things right now. And that taping schedule would have to be the first thing to change, I think. But listen, for this question, I like the idea of Cardona and Myers going after La Rebellion. You know, even if there's and using the Croc Cup to do that is a great way, because the reason that the belt is on Tyrus is because of that exposure that he has in another market. Cardona also has
exposure bucks,
right? And Cardona also has that similar exposure in a different market, but certainly a wrestling-based one. So why not try to capture that again with the World Tag Team titles and at the same time elevate them and make them more, you know, he's out there. He's on the independents, which is what we don't get from Tyrus. And a belt change right now makes, I don't care, unfortunately, about either one of these competitors. I understand that the 30-day rule is long since dead. It's gone. And, you know, for that matter, it may not even have been an all NWA rule. It might just have been, you know, a couple of promotions or something like Jim Crockett Promotions or something for the time. But as of Nuff Said, for example, on one side you got Tyrus, who, whether or not the Champion Series prevents him from defending the title, in which we would understand that, has been on Twitter saying, "Oh, you haters," like he doesn't care. There was no impression ever given that he was going to Game Changer like Kerry Morton did or whatever recently.
Right.
By the way, if you haven't seen Kerry Morton in Game Changer, worth the watch. He gives you a nice glimpse of him as a narcissistic heel. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But as of Nuff said, Tyrus, who, as we know, has 0 title defenses, will have surpassed names like Ricky Steamboat and, right around him, Ricky Steamboat, the Almighty Sheik, or He Who Shall Not Be Named, and Shinya Hashimoto as 38th of 56 on the list of total days spent as world champion, which makes him higher. He's already passed Ronnie Garvin and Tatsumi Fujinami and Abyss and Cody Rhodes and names like that. He has more days as champion than all of those people with 0 title defenses. So I don't expect the 30-day rule to be in place, and I do understand the value and the reason they put the title on him, but he's lost relevance to me. That's the trade-off that they have to say is, we get it, Tim. We did it for these reasons, and you're right. He's on Gutfeld, and but you're not going to see him wrestle very much. And putting it on Cardona makes it equally as irrelevant to me, even though he does do dates, because he's lost to Rolando, I want to say 3 times? Twice.
At least twice.
Yeah.
At least twice. It may have been 3, but...
Right. And it's just, you're dead to me now. Like, I don't hate him personally. He's an amazing talent.
But you got pinned by the ass-slapping guy.
Yeah.
I mean, at this moment in time, you have no legitimacy as a contender as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
And going back to the 30 days thing, that, to me, like you said, I don't remember if it was just a Jim Crockett thing or what have you, but I know that it was a thing, and it created a sense of urgency for that champion. You knew that come towards the end of the month, if you hadn't seen your champion defending yet, you were going to. Before that month's end. And they were constantly building storylines off of those. Those storylines may not go towards the championship per se. They may sway off and get swung into a different direction. But having your champion defend every 30 months was your linchpin that got your storylines going.
Yeah. I mean,
for the most part.
I guess it was outside of JCPT. Actually, Drew just mentioned it tonight. When he actually won the UK title, but wouldn't be around in 30 days to defend it on that tour, so he had to relinquish it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and they figured out how to get it back on him.
Yeah.
But still, there's that. I don't understand the thought process behind why. Like you said, he is passing up all of these people that were working 5-6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. So
I don't know. I know it's a different age and a new. It's a company and not a collaboration of companies anymore. We get all that, but we still want to see some kind of activity around this. It's a terrible period to have to endure.
Yeah,
I think to your question, Dave, like, they can do this. You don't need the 10 pounds of gold. You can, we can win the Crockett Cup or whatever. It's a great storyline. It reminds me of Steve Corino in ECW when he was a cowardly heel. Like he was afraid to wrestle anybody, basically, right?
Yep.
He didn't want to wrestle, and then he manned up and decided that he was going to fight, and bled buckets of blood, sure, but it was a good story from, and you could kind of see it around Cardona, and for that, as far as that goes, Brian Myers too.
Yeah.
Just going, enough of this bullshit. Like, we're just gonna kick ass around here. But Jay posted recently something that said there's only 3 teams that can win the Crockett Cup this year, right? That are acceptable. I think he said Mark Briscoe and whoever he chooses as a partner, which would probably be Jay Lethal, I would think. That I look forward to their match. FTR, and I can't remember who the other team he was. If you're on, Jay, please say. So I don't know, but they could still make a great showing,
Yeah.
Like the wild cards that year or 2-3 years ago.
Man, I miss Royce Isaacs.
Yeah, coming out of nowhere, he and Tom Latimer and going like almost all the way. They could do that.
Yeah.
And then pick it up off of one of those teams afterwards. So I think it's a great way to make the World Tag Team titles relevant, Dave, and to make Matt Cardona and even Brian Myers somewhat relevant.
Well, it keeps him in the spotlight, but he's still in the background.
Yep.
Yeah, I would love to see a champion. Well, yeah, a champion like him with his kind of fan base going, we are the NWA World Tag Team Champions. Do you know what that means? Do you know who's held those belts? People who are not as good as me, like the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express. Like, these are it. Everything else is garbage compared to this.
Yep.
Right? And then wherever they are, having like FTR come out going, could someone please hold my beer? We're gonna, it would at least put some eyes on it. So I think that's a great idea. Hopefully, someone from the Alliance is not our Alliance, but National Wrestling Alliance is listening.
Oh, they are.
Listen, before we call it a day, I wanted to give what will be the final update on the 10 pounds of giveaway contest. It took longer than expected because I agonized over the name change for a very long time. And then I engaged, hey, it's Will Martin, to help me with a new name and logo design, which I have back now. So sometime within the next, I think, 24 hours, you'll see the name change online and all of the different social medias. I was going to do it here, but I'm not ready. And if I do it before, I have everything set up, I run the risk of not, being able to set it up anymore. So,
yep.
And we have a winner. I have contacted the winner, who is very happy, and it is a name that has, been suggested by more than one. So it went to the first person to suggest it online. So we're there. So next week I'll spend 2 minutes just recapping. It's been a lot of fun, and
cool.
There we are. So let's where are we here? Where are we on the socials, Dave?
I'm at Dave Scooby, like the dog, on both Twitter and Instagram. Yeah, that's all I'm really doing right now.
Jeremy?
You can find me on Twitter at HJWOTS. You can also find me on this snazzy little shirt. I'm down in the bottom right-hand corner right there, but then I'm with all these fine gentlemen as well. You can find that on the Alliance blog Streamlabs and Alliance blog Coffee Cup. Cheap plugs, by the way, cheap plugs.
It might be a cheap plug, but it ain't a cheap mug. It
is not.
I don't mean it's expensive. I mean it's a very high quality mug. It's my go-to.
Yes, it is.
Every week.
All their prices are very reasonable, by the way. But that's where you can find me, and my YouTube stuff is coming. I know I keep saying that, but it is coming. I am working on this shit. I am doing this.
Awesome. I look forward to that. I'm going to put that up in the thing here for next week. The Alliance Wrestling is at the Alliance blog, and on all of the social medias. I'm currently on Twitter at NWA Gold _ for now. And on all the social medias under a bunch of different names, and that'll all change as well. But join us, not us, but J Cal and Jaden and DKM tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, for the Alliance Guys podcast. I keep saying every week they've been doing this for something like 15 years, and there's a reason for it. It's worth the time in. And of course, the flagship show every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. It's the hour before Power, the pre-party with J Cal, where he goes over what's happening in the NWA and what you're going to be seeing on Power that week, although not recently. But he does go over what it is that's going to be going up on things like Nuff Said and all of that good stuff. Thank you, everybody, for being here and joining in. And we do appreciate you. We appreciate Dru Onyx as well for stopping in.
And I just wanted to thank everybody. Last week we had our biggest viewing yet. We're at 143 views on our video on our podcast episode for last week. And I just want to thank everybody that shows up every week. Doty and Media, Sam Retro, Willie Bowen, all of you guys. You guys are the reason why we do this. We want to talk to you guys, So I appreciate everybody that is supporting us.
We really do. It's a lot of fun for us and everybody on Jay's show as well. And this is an alliance of all parties, and it's collaborative with the chat. And I agree, Jeremy. We really thank everybody. So until next time, however, it's been great, and we'll see you at the matches.
Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.